This is a suspense film that you absolutely cannot watch if your brain's CPU is not strong enough. With a total runtime of just 107 minutes, the film delivers an astonishing 34 high-energy twists. Its intensely mind-bending narrative structure makes viewers question their own intelligence almost every single minute. Even more jaw-dropping is the fact that the culprit, driven by an absurd reason, actually chose to take the lives of 51 people. Trust me, unless you watch until the very last moment, you will never guess who the real culprit is. On New Year's Eve in 1983, the male lead Jiuan and his girlfriend Yunyang, like everyone else, are counting down in a public square. As the clock strikes midnight, Jiuan proposes to Yunyang, but just as they are immersed in happiness, Yunyang's handbag is suddenly slashed by a thief. Reacting instantly, Jiuan rushes after him, but although he manages to catch the thief, he is unfortunately injured in the abdomen during the struggle. Just as he is rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment, the lights in the operating room suddenly begin to flicker. Because it lasts only a brief moment, everyone assumes it is merely a power malfunction. Fortunately, thanks to the doctor's efforts, Jiuan manages to survive. However, while unconscious, he falls into a strange and unsettling dream. In the dream, he sees a man named Gunwo. Gunwo was a detective at a police station somewhere in Seoul, and the reason this phenomenon occurs is that in the timeline of 2014, on that same New Year's Eve at the same square, Gunwo and his team were preparing to apprehend a suspect. Yet during the confrontation, he is accidentally struck by a gunshot from a colleague. The two men are treated in hospitals at the same moment in different timelines, and perhaps due to a sudden distortion in time and space, Jiuan becomes trapped within this dream. Meanwhile, Gunwo, who later regains consciousness, also sees everything about Jiuan in his dreams. He discovers that although Jiuan is a music teacher, his childhood dream was actually to become a police officer. Perhaps because his beautiful fiancée Yunyang works as a chemistry teacher at the same school, he no longer dwells on his former ambition, and since there are only 2 chemistry teachers at the school, they often openly display their affection in the lab, completely ignoring how the other person feels. From that point on, whenever one of them falls asleep, the other can clearly see everything happening in the other's life through their dreams. One day, Jiuan in 1983 believes that surviving such a disaster must mean future blessings, so he decides to quickly marry Yunyang. As they gaze upon the old house they have long dreamed of, the two cannot help but imagine their future life together. But Yunyang suddenly becomes sentimental. She fears that happiness might come to an abrupt end, and says that if humans truly have a next life, she would never change her appearance and would make sure Jiuan could find her again. At the same time, Gunwo in 2015 witnesses everything through the dream, yet this tender scene is abruptly interrupted by their team leader, Chief Khan, and just as Jiuan and Gunwo believe that everything they have seen is nothing more than a dream, what happens next completely shatters their understanding of reality. One day, Jiuan in 1983 accidentally catches his student Sunbeam hanging out with delinquent classmates. In order to make Sunbeam realize his mistake, Jiuan gives him corporal punishment. When he learns from Sunbeam that the gambling was done just to buy a gift for his girlfriend, Jiuan, who is himself deeply in love, instantly forgives Sunbeam's behavior. He then quickly discovers that Sunbeam's girlfriend is actually Hyunju. As he reflects on teenage romance, heavy snow suddenly begins to fall outside. This excites the students, because it is only early September, yet Jiuan falls into deep thought. It turns out that in his dream, he once saw that in 2015, 32 years later, snow also fell in Seoul at the exact same time. As the scenes in his dreams become clearer and more realistic, Jiuan tells Yunyang about them, but Yunyang insists that they are nothing more than dreams. At that moment, a group of students enters the chemistry lab, and after hearing that Jiuan has had a prophetic dream, they grow curious about what the future world might be like. To prove himself, Jiuan begins describing the future to them, saying that one day everyone will have smartphones, devices that can not only take photos and make calls, but can even be used for payments. Such an unbelievable claim is met with doubt, and no one except Jiuan believes it. Since the students remain skeptical, Jiuan stops boasting about future technology and instead says that if Seoul sees snow falling for 2 consecutive days on September 26th and 27th in 2015, it will prove that he truly saw the future. However, no sooner has he said this than Gunwoo in 2015 suddenly learns through a broadcast that 32 years earlier, a man named Jiuan had once predicted snowfall. Gunwoo was instantly shocked, and he then tells his colleagues about the dream, but such an extremely bizarre story is naturally impossible for them to believe, while Gunwoo himself finds it far too real to ignore. Later that day, while reviewing surveillance footage, Gunwoo freezes when he sees a figure on the screen, because the woman shown is exactly Yoon from his dreams. To determine whether this is reality or a dream, Gunwoo immediately seeks her out, but the woman insists that she is not Yoon and even treats Gunwoo as a disturbing stalker, dragging him to the police station, where he finally realizes that he has mistaken her identity. Seeing that the incident has drawn the attention of Chief Kong, Gunwoo has no choice but to explain everything, and once it becomes clear that it is all a misunderstanding, the two sides reconcile that night over a late-night meal. Only then does the woman tell the police that her real name is Soon, and although she is indeed a chemistry teacher, she does not work at the Jiuan high school Gunwoo mentioned. This makes Gunwoo doubt his own judgment, but when he notices the way Soon counts, he instantly becomes convinced that what he saw was not a dream. Realizing how firmly Gunwoo believes in the dreams, Soon meets a senior administrator the next day and cautiously asks whether they have ever heard of Jiuan high school. Her question immediately makes the administrator turn serious.
우리 미성고 옛날 이름이 서경고예요.
네? 네? 정말이세요?
80년대 재단이 바뀌면서 이름도 다시 지었죠. 근데 그 얘기 다른 선생님들하고는 안 했으면 좋겠군요.
Filled with doubt, Soon quickly checks the records, and what she discovers is shocking, because back in the 1980s, there really was a chemistry teacher who looked exactly like her and was named Yoon. This discovery makes Soon begin to believe Gunwoo's story. Since Yoon from 1983 has already passed away, Gunwoo decides to investigate the cause of her death and carefully writes down major events from September and October of 1983 in a notebook. Before he can finish copying everything, Chief Kong suddenly drops a stack of files on his desk, saying they are unsolved cases and asking Gunwoo to see if there is still any possibility. At that moment, Gunwoo notices that Yoon's case from 1983 is clearly listed among them. He then learns that Yoon was found dead in a public restroom at 7 p.m. on October 4th, 1983, with the cause being a ruptured carotid artery, and that the suspect was a man named Hyun-chul, who was deeply in debt and often gambled at certain locations. The information Gunwoo was reading at this very moment is unexpectedly transmitted into Jiuan's dreams back in 1983. To be safe, Jiuan immediately finds his fiancée Yoon as soon as he returns to school the next day, pleading with her to wait for him after work before going home. Unaware of Jiuan's true thoughts and already having other plans, Yoon pretends to agree. Even so, Jiuan remains deeply unsettled. Just then, a commotion breaks out next door, and when Jiuan rushes over, he discovers that South Korea has defeated Uruguay 2-1. Although the entire nation is celebrating, Jiuan's expression turns grim. Before the match, a colleague had asked him for a prediction, and based on his dream, Jiuan casually said the score would be 2-1. Now that reality has unfolded exactly as he said, it means that Yoon will also die today. To prevent the dream from becoming reality, Jiuan believes the best solution is to find Hyun-chul first and stop him. Using the suspect information he saw in his dream, Jiuan quickly tracks down an underground gambling den, but when he asks whether Hyun-chul is there, the nervous Hyun-chul mistakenly thinks loan sharks have come for him again and immediately runs for his life. Although Jiuan gives chase at once, Hyun-chul, who knows the area extremely well, soon manages to shake him off. At the same time, Yoon secretly goes to a bridal shop to try on wedding dresses, and just as she steps outside, she is knocked over by a panicked Hyun-chul. Sensing that Hyun-chul is not a decent person, Yoon can only accept her bad luck. She then goes into a public restroom to clean her clothes, but at that moment, a man enters. Meanwhile, Jiuan unknowingly arrives at the same place, and before he can react, Hyung-chul suddenly rushes out of the restroom, seeing Hyung-chul's hands covered in blood and Yoon-yeon's crossbody bag. A dreadful feeling instantly overwhelms him. At the same time, Gun-woo in 2015 learns through the dream that Jiuan has failed to stop the tragedy. Soon, forensic personnel arrive at the scene, and as Jiuan watches his beloved being lifted into an ambulance, his mind completely collapses, unable to accept that the woman he was about to marry is now forever separated from him. A few days later, the police finally arrest the suspect Hyung-chul, but in the face of Jiuan's desperate questioning, Hyung-chul remains completely silent. It is not until he hears a child calling out "Dad."
아니야, 난 안 죽었어. 안 죽였다 승국아!
It turns out that Hyung-chul is actually Sunbeam's father. Thinking about how he had never given up on Sunbeam and had continuously tried to guide him back onto the right path, Jiuan cannot help but begin doubting his own decisions, even though Sunbeam firmly tells him that although his father's character is indeed flawed, he believes his father has absolutely been wronged, and promises that he will find the real culprit himself. Jiuan's heart has already turned cold with despair. At the same time, Soon in 2015 also learns about the situation, and just as she and Gun-woo both believe that this incident is beyond saving, what happens next unexpectedly allows them to see hope once again. That day, Soon accidentally witnesses a disciplinary teacher administering punishment to students. From the department head, she learns that the students were caught smoking. It turns out that back in 1983, a serious fire broke out at a church, which is why the school now strictly forbids it. Since the department head does not elaborate further, Soon has no choice but to ask Gun-woo to investigate the details. Only then do the two discover that the 49 students who died in the fire in 1983 were all students from Yoon-yeon's class. At the time, due to the overwhelming influence of a powerful conglomerate, this major incident was never reported. Putting all the information together, it becomes clear that Yoon-yeon's death in 1983 is inevitably connected to that fire. But to unravel all the mysteries, their only hope lies with Jiuan. As long as Jiuan can learn more details from Gun-woo through the dream, it may not only change the future and successfully prevent the fire tragedy, but also hold a strong possibility of altering Yoon-yeon's fate as well. Gun-woo then immediately conducts a comprehensive analysis of the school cases from that year. According to the investigation, it is confirmed that aside from Yoon-yeon, who died from a carotid artery injury, there were actually several students back then who also died by the same method. Through further review, combined with the gas masks discovered at the fire scene, Gun-woo gradually realizes that Hyung-chul does not seem to be the real culprit. Whether in terms of method or timing, it clearly does not make logical sense. This means that Hyung-chul, who was framed back then, most likely encountered the real culprit in the restroom. Based on the investigative details seen in the dream, Jiuan soon finds Hyung-chul in prison. As expected, Hyung-chul explains that he became a suspect because after knocking Yoon-yeon down, he noticed a large amount of cash in her bag. Desperate to pay off his massive debts, he gave in to the idea of robbery. But when he entered the restroom, he not only smelled a strong, irritating odor, but before he could act, he discovered that Yoon-yeon had already been killed. Even though he was utterly panicked at the time, he still did not forget his original intent. However, just before leaving, he accidentally glanced toward a stall in the corner and saw another man there.
까만 가면 위에 안경을 쓴 것 같기도.
방독면이면 말이 되겠네요.
After obtaining this crucial information, Jiuan immediately finds Sunbeam, now completely certain that Sunbeam's father is not the real culprit. Then, according to what was mentioned in the dream, that the church would suffer a horrifying major fire at 4:30 in the afternoon, Jiuan prepares early in order to stop the tragedy. Sure enough, thick smoke soon begins to pour out of the church, and 49 students are instantly engulfed by toxic fumes. At that moment, the masked man finally appears, and the main doors have already been locked by him. At this critical moment, Jiuan arrives in time with a fire extinguisher, successfully rescues the students, and together with other teachers who rush over, manages to put out the devastating fire. Unfortunately, the masked man takes advantage of the chaos and escapes the scene. As Jiuan successfully changes the past, the timeline 15 years later also begins to shift. When Gun-woo enters the church, he seems to sense Jiuan's presence, And indeed, Jiuan from 1983 is truly there at that moment. Although the two cannot see each other, they can clearly feel one another's existence, with every movement vividly appearing in their minds. To make up for the regret in his heart, Jiuan hangs the wedding ring meant for Yun on the pendulum mechanism of the grandfather clock. Later, Ganwoo in 2015 instinctively takes that ring away. Although the fire has been prevented, the danger facing the students has not yet been resolved. That day, Seon-min suddenly approaches Jiuan, saying she wants to return Yun's handkerchief to him. It turns out that before Yun was killed, Seon-min once discovered her injured while patrolling the school at night and passing by the chemistry lab. Because she had forgotten her books, Seon-min returned to retrieve them, noticed someone seemed to be inside the lab, and decisively walked in. Seon-min's appearance reminds Jiuan of the dream, in which she is destined to become the second victim. To protect Seon-min and catch the killer, Jiuan secretly begins following her, then hides in a cabinet in the chemistry lab ahead of time at the predicted moment of the crime. After Seon-min arrives alone, another student enters shortly after, but smoke suddenly fills the room, and Seon-min quickly loses consciousness.
백지원 일어나. 일어나 백지원.
Although Jiuan eventually regains his clarity, Seon-min has already fallen victim to the attack. Jiuan immediately smashes the window to dilute the toxic gas, then picks up shards of glass and throws them at the masked man, forcing him to flee. However, during the brief moment when he shakes off Jiuan, Hyunju happens to spot him at a corner, with a scream echoing out. Jiuan rushes over in time, preventing the masked man from succeeding. Even so, it is unexpected that the school is holding an event to bury letters meant to be opened 20 years later. This gives the masked man a chance to blend into the crowd and place the weapon into the time capsule. As the box is buried underground, the masked man escapes once again. Although Jiuan changes Hyunju's fate, it also brings trouble upon himself. To completely get rid of Jiuan's pursuit, the masked man frames him instead. Despite Jiuan's frantic attempts to explain, the police refuse to listen, realizing that he is about to be arrested. Jiuan is forced to resist and successfully escapes through a window. Fortunately, Sungbyum appears in time on a motorcycle and manages to get Jiuan away from the school. Jiuan tells Sungbyum that he has already confirmed the killer is the masked man, but has repeatedly failed to catch him. Jiuan asks Sungbyum that if he himself meets an unfortunate end, Sungbyum must continue pursuing the killer. With that, he hands over the recorded dream information and asks Sungbyum to keep it safe. Although Sungbyum finds it hard to believe the dream, he still agrees to help Jiuan. Meanwhile, during the time Ganwoo in 2015 spends with So-eun, feelings have gradually developed between them as well. Encouraged by Jiuan's subtle hints, Ganwoo decides to gather his courage and confess his feelings to So-eun. Fortunately, So-eun has also harbored feelings for him all along, but just as the two are about to begin a relationship, a stranger suddenly sets his sights on So-eun. Ganwoo waits anxiously through the entire night, and just as he is about to call again, a broadcast suddenly reports that So-eun's car fell off a cliff the previous night. Although no body is found at the scene, Ganwoo's mind goes completely blank. From the dashcam footage provided by Chief Kong, it is revealed that another car forced So-eun to stop. She was quickly rendered unconscious by gas, and then a masked man stepped out of the vehicle and made a slashing gesture toward the camera. This scene instantly makes Ganwoo realize that the man is without a doubt the killer behind the 1983 murders.
방독면 30년 전에 놈을 잡았어야 했어.
To locate where So-eun was abducted, Ganwoo, with the help of his colleagues, reviews a large amount of surveillance footage near the crime scene. After carefully filtering the footage, the two finally narrow it down to a possible location, and Ganwoo immediately drives there. Meanwhile, the masked man brings some food to So-eun, and just as he is loosening her restraints, although she cannot remove the man's mask, So-eun quickly snatches his phone before escaping, and before the masked man can fully catch up, she immediately calls Ganwoo. Fortunately, Ganwoo happens to be nearby, but before he can spot So-eun, the masked man has already found her.
정신 침착해요. 내가 금방 갈게요. 조금만 참아요.
It is clear that Sohn has seen the masked man's face before. At the same time, Ganwoo arrives near the tunnel, and seeing no sign of Sohn, he drives further ahead to check. Luckily, Sohn's desperate calls from behind make Ganwoo instinctively turn around, just as Sohn believes she is finally saved. Fate cruelly has other plans. In the end, Sohn still loses her life at the hands of her abductor. The sight before him leaves Ganwoo devastated, while the masked man watches everything with cold indifference. At the same time, Jiuan in 1983 also witnesses what happens through the dream. After identifying Sohn's belongings, Ganwoo suddenly realizes that the phone she used to call him did not actually belong to her. This means the number most likely belongs to the abductor. Ganwoo immediately launches an investigation, but what he never expects is that the phone number is registered under his superior, Chief Kang. To uncover the truth, Ganwoo secretly enters Chief Kang's home, and upon seeing the walls covered with case files, he finally understands that Chief Kang has been searching for a certain culprit all along. When he discovers that Chief Kang's wife is actually Hyunju from 1983, everything suddenly becomes clear. Still, to confirm his suspicions, he calls Chief Kang to ask for an explanation, realizing that Ganwoo has already uncovered the truth. Chief Kang finally confesses everything. It turns out that he is Sung Byum from 1983. 20 years earlier, when he returned to his alma mater with his classmates and opened the time capsule buried in 1983, he obtained the weapon left behind after Seon-min was harmed. To fulfill the promise he once made to Jiuan, he decided to become a police officer and spent years searching for information about the masked man. But unexpectedly, this action caused the masked man to set his sights on him. To force Chief Kang to abandon the investigation, the masked man abducted Hyunju and used her life as leverage. What Chief Kang never imagined was that even after handing over the weapon, the masked man still took Hyunju's life. Although Chief Kang managed to shoot the man in the shoulder, he ultimately failed to stop him from escaping. From that point on, the masked man vanished without a trace. However, an overwhelming desire for vengeance haunted Chief Kang for years, driving him to obsessively search for the culprit. So one day, when he discovered that Ganwoo could see events from 1983 through dreams, and that someone identical to Yoon Young had appeared, Chief Kang immediately devised a plan. After listening again to Jihuan's old recordings and learning about the dream information, he abducted Sohn one night and deliberately imitated the masked man's past actions. Only in this way could he fully provoke Ganwoo and allow Jihuan in 1983 to experience everything through the dream, pushing Jihuan to find the culprit as soon as possible. Because once Jihuan successfully changed the past, Hyunju in the future would not lose her life. Things indeed progressed as he had anticipated, but what he never expected was that before Jiuan in 1983 could catch the culprit, Sohn would escape from his control. To prevent Sohn from disrupting the plan, and having completely lost his rationality at the time, he drove his car into her, causing her death. Though he was later filled with regret, Chief Kang guesses that Jiuan in 1983 may be witnessing everything through the dream, so while firmly staring at Ganwoo, he tries to convey a message to Jiuan. He begs Jiuan to end his life as soon as he wakes up, so that Sohn will not be killed by him, and hopes that Jiuan will bring the real culprit to justice.
내가 불렀어. 쏘지 마! 선생님, 꿈에서 깨어나면 과거의 날 죽이세요. 살인자가 될 양아치 강승범이를. 그러면 정소은이 죽을 일은 없을 거야.
But no matter how desperately Chief Kang from 15 years later pleaded, Jiuan could not bring himself to harm Chief Kang from 1983. Based on the information revealed by Chief Kang in the dream, Jiuan goes alone to the school, determined to change the future by his own hands. The moment Jiuan enters the chemistry lab, toxic gas instantly fills the room. At that moment, the masked culprit slowly appears. But Jiuan is prepared this time, and the two immediately engage in a fierce struggle. During the fight, Jiuan quickly tears off the mask, finally realizing that the disturbed individual before him is another chemistry teacher at the school. Faced with Jiuan's frantic questioning, the culprit openly confesses everything. He reveals that he had always harbored feelings for Young, and every time he saw the two of them in a relationship, an uncontrollable anger would surge within him. One day, when Yoon discovered that he had been secretly stealing chemical supplies from the school, he feared being exposed, and chose the mindset of destroying what he could not possess. As for why Min also lost her life, it was because she unexpectedly came to the chemistry lab that night, and unsure whether she had seen him or told others, he decided to eliminate all of Yoon's students. At first, he did not intend to target Hyunju, but after learning from her that she would never forget the culprit's eyes, he had no choice but to abduct her, and Hyunju is now in the next room, unable to accept the truth. Jiuan barely has time to recover before the culprit launches another attack. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Sunbeam arrives in time, and after hearing Jiuan's instructions, he immediately goes to look for Hyunju. Jiuan soon reunites with them, but just as they believe everything has finally come to an end, the next second proves otherwise. Although Jiuan was stabbed in the abdomen, while Sunbeam was fighting him nearby, he relied on sheer willpower to throw a bottle of sulfuric acid at the chemistry teacher. Even as the chemistry teacher desperately flees, Jiuan refuses to let him go, chasing him to the rooftop where they once again engage in close combat. Severely injured, Jiuan is clearly no match for him. As thunder and lightning rage, Jiuan suddenly comes up with a plan, cuffing himself to the culprit and dragging him to the railing, then freeing himself from the handcuffs just before a bolt of lightning strikes. Although the true culprit is finally gone, Jiuan is left on the brink of death. Before his final breath, Jiuan tells Sunbeam to always be a good person. With the events ending in this way, the future is successfully changed by Jiuan. At the same time, Gunwoo witnesses everything through the dream, but when he returns to the police station, his colleagues claim they do not recognize him, and Gunwoo realizes that Jiuan's actions in 1983 have completely altered the world. Gunwoo then goes to Seojeong High School, and the moment he steps out of the car, Soon naturally links arms with him, while teachers and students alike greet them warmly, making it clear that the couple is well known to everyone. When Gunwoo reaches his seat, he discovers his own staff badge waiting there, realizing that in this timeline, just like Jiuan in 1983, he is also a music teacher at the school, and under Jiuan's guidance, Sunbeam has not only become a disciplinary director, but is also happily living with Hyunju. Only then does Gunwoo finally understand that he and Jiuan from 1983 are not two people from different timelines, but the same person across two lifetimes, who by chance became connected through dreams and shared the same information. In the final moments, Gunwoo and Soon, just like Jiuan and Yoon in 1983, plan to purchase the old house as their future home. Yet at that moment, Soon suddenly feels a strange familiarity, as if she had been here in a previous life. The two in 1983 failed to end up together due to fate, but as cycles turn, destiny ultimately shows them mercy in this lifetime.
나랑 결혼해줘.